I have a habit that I'd like to share that I
Yeah.
think is a good one. Um, when a friend has a set, and this actually, this is going to be, this is a relatively recent development because I've become a public figure. And so I know other public figures. But whenever anyone's going through something shitty and I find out about it, I just send them a private message being like, hey, keep your head up. It's going to be
Right.
fine. Like, da 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 da. Because I just know that they feel like all this stuff coming at
Right.
them. And I just want them to remember that it's nonsense.
For sure. You know why that's a really good thing? It's one of the things I teach in my class at Harvard, that we have a tendency to think that the bad feelings that we get that are provoked by a bad event, that is permanent. Because that's the way our mind wants us. If a tiger's chasing you, you want in that moment to think that tiger's going to be chasing me forever. And so you muster all of your energy to get away. But the truth of the matter is that your brain, the bad feelings are going to dissipate. That's a phenomenon called homeostasis. You will go back to equilibrium. You just don't know it in that moment. And it's very, very important. I mean, sooner or later, your friend who's going through a tough time got fired, business went under, they got a really horrible article about them in the New York Times, whatever it happens to be, or on a smaller scale, that they're something happened
Those are
with one
pretty
of
much the types of things I'm talking about. But
yeah, I
continue.
know. Yeah. And so they're going to feel better. But when Andrew writes a text saying it's going to be okay, keep your head up, trust me, this is a 1 week story.
Yeah.
What you've done is you've accelerated the homeostasis of those bad feelings for that person. You can literally help somebody's basic negative emotions to dissipate. You can affect the neural circuitry of your friend by simply sending a text saying, "Trust me, this is a 1 week story."
So I want to confess something else. This is a little bit of insight into the life of someone who's in the public eye. So occasionally I receive those messages from friends being
Yeah.
like, hey, it's going to be fine. And then my reaction's actually mixed because I'm like, oh shit, I guess they saw that, like,
I guess it must have been really bad.
yeah, exactly. Like, I guess they saw that freaking
Yeah.
thing that I was like, yeah, no one's gonna see that.
Yeah.
And then you get a bunch of texts. You're like, oh, I guess people did see that.
Yeah.
So when I send these texts, it's for something objectively like I could not have missed.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's interesting that that actually happened to me when I was first the CEO in Washington, running this think tank at the center of political controversy, and I handled something publicly really wrong, and I just got barbecued in the Washington Post, and a bunch of I just didn't handle it very well. And I was feeling horrible. Like, this is going to dog me forever. Yeah, catastrophized, which is a real cognitive problem that people do. Something goes
Yeah,
wrong, you're like,
totally.
this is going to be horrible forever. I thought this is going to dog me for my whole career. This is it. I failed as a CEO.
It's gonna be on your
It's
tombstone,
gonna be,
man.
It's going to be written on my tombstone. Screwed up, human resource issues, or whatever it is. And my neighbor across the street was this grizzled Washington veteran. I lived in Bethesda at the time, and this guy had been through the wars 100 times. And he says, "So I saw in the paper." And I'm like, "Oh, you saw in the paper." He says, "I deal with crises all the time. On a scale of 0 to 10 in severity, this is a 0.025.
Wow, that's so nice to hear.
And it was, at first I thought, this SOB is minimizing my pain. And then I thought, no, actually, he's quite objectively, he's assessing the severity of this problem. And he helped me get back on, homeostatically, getting back to a kind of an emotional equilibrium. And so the key thing for us all to remember is when bad things are happening, they're not going to last. On the other hand, Andrew, when good things happen, they're not going to last either. And one of the parts of the striver's curse that
That's
I
not
talk
right.
about in this book is that, one of the things that a lot of people watching us, they might not have an alcohol use disorder or be addicted to drugs, but they're success addicts. And one of the things that success brings you professionally and socially is that it gives you a hit of dopamine in your brain. And you become an addict for that. You want the success hit again and again and again. And the reason you're never satisfied, the reason that it's so hard when you achieve something and you're off that mark, is because you're in true deficit, dopamine deficit. And that's excruciating. The reason for that it doesn't last is the same reason that your bad feelings don't last, because your brain has to go back to its equilibrium. It's got to go back to its baseline. And that's one of the things that we have to remember as well. You can't, through more and more and more and more success, actually attain the
You need to
satisfaction
find a
you seek.
better, more sustainable curve.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
that's
and
the
furthermore,
fundamental
you
lesson.
need to manage not just your haves, you need to manage your wants.
Yeah.
You need a wants. One of the great sources of consolation.
Would you rather be special or happy?
That's one of the questions I ask in the book. And, as I was interviewing this lady for the book, and she was a Wall Street titan. And she
I
was
know who
telling
it
me,
is. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah, I know. It's like, I'll take it to my grave. I mean, I don't divulge any identities in this book because some of this stuff is so sensitive. But this woman who has had an incredible career on Wall Street, but she's noticing that she's sort of starting to miss a beat. And there are a lot of things in her life that she doesn't like. And I said, well, step back, work on your marriage and your relationship with your adult kids, and stop drinking and get into the gym, and don't worry about work so much. You've got all the money you could ever need. Why do you keep doing this? And she said, I think I'd prefer to be special than happy. And I thought to myself, that's pretty common. That's the success addict's anthem. They prefer to be special than happy because special gives you the hit, perfectly. There's no heroin addict on the planet that thinks they're finally going to have had enough heroin. There's no alcoholic who thinks, I'm just going to have 3 more bottles and I'm going to stop spontaneously because I'm not going to need it anymore. They just prefer to be high than happy. And this is what we do a lot. You can't get to your second curve unless you get off that wheel, that hamster wheel of hit, success, success.
Having better wants. One rule of thumb I'm taking from this conversation
What's that?
I think people should take to heart.
What's that?
Visit one friend per year for their birthday.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No. It's an astonishing thing. You're never sorry you did that. You think, can I afford to do it?
At the time, I'm so busy.
I'm so
busy, Arthur.
I know, but it's so true. And it's all the things that I remember. It's incredible. I remember one time I was debating, whether or not to go to a friend's house for dinner because I'm so busy. I just didn't really have time. And I went anyway, and I'm like, this is going to be really late. And I don't remember anything about what I was doing, what I was so stressed out about. But that night we had dinner. It was in Maryland and up on the Severn River, which is it's a beautiful place. And it was at dusk. And this friend of mine, he said, I want you to see this thing. And he took me out to his garden, and there was this flower, and all the flowers were closed. It was dusk. All the flowers were closed. And he says, watch a flower. I'm like, what? He says,
what?
Watch the flower. I'm like, okay. And 10 minutes later, it suddenly opened, just spontaneously, and they all opened at the same time. Turns out they pop open at dusk. And I was like, and I remember that. I'm going to remember that. It was intensely satisfying. I'm going to remember that for the rest of my life. I'm not going to remember the work that I forewent that evening. That was the evening of the flower. And this, if you go to your friend's birthday, if you do something that's meaningful, if you look at something, if you narrow cast into the beauty that is the little things in life, then you'll get the intense satisfaction that you actually seek. But sitting on that treadmill, hit, you're never going to get enough dopamine that you're going to be ultimately satisfied.
One fascinating tidbit in your book was that apparently the loneliest professions are doctor and lawyer.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to dig into that a little bit, though I did remember, because I was an attorney in a past life for 5 months. And
you went to law school for 3 years and then you practiced as a lawyer for 5 months?
Yeah, that's right. My Asian parents were very pleased. So,
they were very pleased for 5 months.
No, they were pretty sad. But
I've had that
lawyers,
too. Are you kidding? I didn't go to college till I was 30. I had a gap decade. Imagine how fun that was for my professor parents.
Wow. So parents, take it easy. Your kids can always come
Everything
back
can
around.
turn out okay.
I do remember reading at the time that lawyers had the highest average alcohol consumption of any profession.
Yeah.
But this spoke to this striver's curse you write about, in large part because apparently a lot of high achievers self-medicate via alcohol.
They do. According to the OECD, as a matter of fact, alcohol use disorder predominates among people with high socioeconomic status in the United States, especially among men.
Which is not the stereotype.
No. We think about people who are down and out as getting drunk. And the people who are using alcohol to blunt anxiety, to make it possible to unwind, to get the machine off, is actually more common for strivers than it is for people who are not strivers. Now, the truth is that addiction is a very funny thing. We tend to become addicted to the thing that self-medicates us for our particular malady. And so you find, for example, that kids, adolescents, who are struggling to focus, who have maybe some attention deficit issues, but it's unremediated, they're way more likely to get addicted to nicotine. They're way more likely to start smoking at 13 or 14 because nicotine is an unbelievably effective ADD or ADHD drug. It sucks dopamine into the prefrontal cortex and allows you to focus. So the same thing is true if you have a lot of stress, you have a lot of anxiety, you have a lot of trouble making the world slow down because you're such a striver. alcohol is incredibly effective at turning the switch on that. The problem is it's a messy drug and it's a dangerous drug. There's a lot of data that show that, that one of the biggest reasons that people wind up getting unhappier as they get older is precisely because of alcohol use. The alcohol is not because of the happiness problems. The causality runs in the other direction. Alcohol is a really dangerous thing that we have. And for everybody watching us, so one of the things I talk about in this book is if you want to grow old well, you want to get on that second curve.
You want to age gracefully.
You look at your alcohol use and look at your substance use. But maybe the most dangerous substance of all for the strivers is the success addiction. This idea, the self-objectification, where I'm an effective person. I'm going to make, it's weird. And we all fall prey to this. My father died a long time ago. I mean, my father died in 2002 when he was pretty young. And I still think all the time, I wonder if he'd be proud of me. I wonder if he'd be proud of this book. I wonder if my dad read this book. What do you think of this book? We're very tied to the expectations even of long dead relatives. And for strivers, where that level of expectation is sky high, it's very easy to turn into a workaholic. It's very easy to turn into a success addict, and that's a tyranny.